Thank you, Madam Chairman. My colleagues on the dais today, and my colleagues from the Canadian Parliament, ministers and others, it's a great pleasure and privilege for me to be able to say a few words to you today. I had the opportunity of being at the conference in London, and it seems to me we made considerable progress there in really trying to focus attention on the question of what is to be done. But before dealing with the question of what is to be done, I just want to try and deal with some of the arguments which one still unfortunately hears about why anti-Semitism is not a big problem. The argument that one hears is that, of course, it was a problem historically, but essentially one has to appreciate that with the terrible explosion of the Holocaust, essentially the world very quickly realized the implications of anti-Semitism, and there are very powerful and common forces working in every country against racism of this kind, and there really is no need for any further measures. There's no need for any further analysis of what is taking place in the world today, because while there may be some outbreaks of racial feeling with respect to the Jewish people, it's really no different than other forms of racism that one sees in the world, and therefore there's no need for us to take special action or special steps. And certainly there are those who say, for example, that there will be arguments about politics in the Middle East, but one should not confuse those arguments in any way, shape or form with anti-Semitism. Alors, je vais passer dans la deuxième.
Now I would like to speak in the second official language of Canada. So if you would like to hear the interpretation, please put your headsets on. I think it is absolutely necessary to face those two arguments, or to deal with them. The historical argument, or this issue of anti-Semitism, which was absolutely tragic, has been resolved. But I think that to the contrary, it is important to recognize that the problem with anti-Semitism is that it was not an extraordinary disease that occurred in Europe at one point and has now been cured. I think it's important to fully understand the situation and realize that anti-Semitism is a chronic condition for humanity. It is a chronic disease that, from time to time, explodes. And when it does explode, it generates extraordinary costs paid by an entire population. It's important to understand that within many communities and many cultures, and even in many religions, there is today and still hatred toward the Jewish people. We need only look at the bizarre explanations for events like the tragedy of September 2001, where on the streets in many countries, Jews were supposedly responsible for that crisis. Conspiracy theories, hatred, and Jew bashing, all of those theories are unfortunately still with us. They have not disappeared. They are not a thing of the past. They are still in the world. Secondly, with regard to the issue of Israel, yes, we have to say clearly, yes, naturally we may disagree with the Israeli government, but that is very different from denying the possibility of the existence of a Jewish state, to deny the possibility of having an area that is protected for the Jewish people, and denying the legitimate place for the state of Israel.
That this chronic condition has a way of erupting. It erupts from time to time in different places for different reasons, and one has only to look at polls which talk in various parts of the world about explanations for certain events. Who do you hold responsible, for example, for the financial crisis of 2008-2009, to understand that theories about Jewish conspiracies are still tragically alive and well. Alive and well in too many parts of the world, alive and well on too many street corners, alive and well in too many coffee shops, alive and well in too many parliaments. And we need to have the courage to say that. We have not put an end to anti-Semitism. The Holocaust did not lead to a sudden embrace by the whole world of the legitimacy of the Jewish people. And this is something we have to deal with as human beings, to recognize anti-Semitism's very special place in this horrible lexicon of racism, that it has run deeper, that it has run further, that it has created more havoc, more harm, the blood libels, all the nonsense that is spread. This is what we're fighting against. And yes, we are having to continue to fight against those who say it's not a problem, it's not an issue. Well, all we can say is wake up. Because the other thing we know and we've learned from history is that where there is a current of anti-Semitism, there is also a current of xenophobia, there is a current of hatred towards others. It's the worst example of this chronic condition. In the lexicon of hatred and propaganda, the protocols of the Elders of Zion hold a special place. A forgery that was used to blame the Jews and the Jewish people for all forms of wrongdoing and hardship faced by the peoples of the world. A so-called plot for Jewish domination. In the charter of Hamas, today's charter of Hamas, not 50 years ago charter of Hamas, not any other document, but in today's charter of Hamas, you will find a specific positive reference to the protocols of the Elders of Zion. So don't tell me that when the criticism of Israel extends beyond a policy about a settlement, about a political issue, about a government that comes and that goes, because I'm living proof that governments come and go. And that's not what it's about. It's about that one has to recognize that some of the attacks and some of the intellectual assaults on the government of Israel are not about a particular government. They are about the existence of the state itself, and they are about the right of the Jewish people to have a political home. And they draw on the oldest and worst strains of anti-Semitism imaginable. And if we do not recognize these historic facts and these simple facts as facts, then we're simply not doing our job. Now, I think it's important for us to build on the institutional connections that we can make. I think there are things that parliaments can do together. I think those governments, for example, that have appointed special ambassadors to deal with this question, I think those that have argued that the United Nations itself needs to be seized of this question, that our regional institutions need to be seized of this question, that we need to be dealing with where there are broadcasts which clearly, emphatically, are not simply political criticisms of one government or another, but are rather assaults on the very nature of a modern state. I think we need to respond to that effectively. I think our diplomacy needs to respond to that effectively. I think our parliaments need to respond to it effectively. And I think that's something we need to work on. We need to go beyond the speeches at this conference to trying to see what are the institutional ways in which we can strengthen this fight. Because it is a fight, and it's a fight that we have to win. But like the fight against all chronic diseases, we may never fully win. We may never fully erase all of the little festering corners of hatred that exist around the world. But at least we will do everything we can to dampen them down, to shame them, to show that those horrible infestations that we find on the internet are nothing but the expressions of the most appalling hatred towards a people. And that is the challenge that we face as parliamentarians. And it is a challenge, my friends, which transcends party. It transcends differences that we may have from day to day about budgets or about policy or about politics. It is something which should draw us together from the right, from the left, from the center, from all aspects of our political life in order to make good on this fight, because it is the best of fights to have. Thank you very much.